At the age of 12, I decided that I wanted to work, and legal working age was 13. So I basically sold myself on being 13 years of age and started working at Suzanne Gray, selling all those Go For It T-shirts. But that really led me to this, work ethic and passion. I mean, I found that at the time that was wildly appropriate. I wanted to start working. I needed to get money. So that's what I started to do. And I think throughout all of my career changes and through my pivots in life, I really chose to sell myself, whether I had the exact credentials for the next pivot or the next job I had. What I am very, very good at is selling myself. A great example of that was I was working in foreign exchange as a currency broker, which is basically, selling money. It was executing, foreign exchange transactions. So really I was dealing with banks, I was dealing with customers. And at the end of the day, sales is sales. Whether you're selling a pen, whether you're selling a car, whether you're selling yourself, it's all a part of the sales process. So when I went to Ritz Carlton for the interviews, and I had a very, very lengthy interview process, I actually dragged that out and talked about, my customer relations and how I was dealing with the banks and how I was dealing with my clients, and really made it, rather than me being a broker screaming out, currency numbers all day, which is what I was doing, I was still interacting with clients and I was still interacting with the banks, but I obviously ramped up that. I really ramped up that side of things. I sold the fact that I'm a great salesperson, and that's what I needed for the job. So I wasn't lying. I basically was telling them what they needed to hear. What were my strengths to go into this role as a sales and marketing assistant? Well, I was an assistant sales and marketing manager for Ritz Carlton, was really to go in there and sell them on my strengths. And I was dealing with banks. I was client relations. That wasn't 90% of my role, but obviously I needed that strong sales side to be able to go into work for Ritz Carlton. And that's really what I did. So that was appropriate at the time. That was wildly appropriate to exaggerate those specific skills. So wildly appropriate is about taking something away each week that's going to make you a better person, that's going to make the people around you better people. I've created a life and a family that I love. I want that same thing for you. And everyone's different. Everyone has different struggles and different objectives, but you need to sometimes take those wildly inappropriate decisions in order to push yourself, in order to make changes. And I think I love the fact that I can look back and have no regrets whatsoever. I don't waste a day. I don't waste a minute. I go out and get what I want, and I do it, whether it's always appropriate, whether it's not, it doesn't matter. I want the same for you. I want everyone to come on a journey with me, listen to stupid stories, things where I push boundaries, doors that I basically banged on, and, you've got to be pushing every day. You've got to be, and sometimes I've explained before, you might be doing too much. It might be taking the brakes off. Only you know what's appropriate for you. But I want to take you on the journey of real life experiences, because I've been there, I've done it, and I'm living it. It's not about going out and being reckless and saying, look, I'm a doctor and you're not a doctor, and trying to get a job as a doctor. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about strategically positioning yourself and the way you present yourself in order to move forward and get what you really want in life. And I think the most important thing that you've got to be able to do in those situations is really be able to sell your greatest qualities, sell what you have. It's not about going around and, trying to open doors that you're not qualified to do. You've obviously got the qualifications, you just have to exaggerate those qualifications. So that's what wildly appropriate is going to be teaching you over the next few months. When I started my business, I really, I was unsure of myself. I wasn't sure whether it was the right thing to do with an 8-week-old baby, but it's something that you've just got to do. There's never a right time. There's never a right time to have kids. There's never a right time to get married. There's never a right time to start a business. There's never a right time to leave a job. There is no perfect time in life. You've got to just do it. And that's what I love about that whole Nike thing, is because so many times if you just start, and I think everyone has this fear of just starting something. What if? Why not? It was a classic the other day. I was asked to do something from the school by Milana's school, and it was a very sort of, prestigious. And she's like, Mum, why would they ask you? And I was so shocked. I was like, well, why not? And I think you've got to have that attitude when you're going out and when you're waking up every day. And people say to me, oh, but how do you change jobs? And you've just got to start looking at, different professions. It doesn't matter what you apply in life. You've just got to start. People go, oh, I don't know how to cook. Well, start. I don't know how to play tennis. Well, start. I don't know, how to find a new relationship. Well, start. It's all about just starting. People put off so many things day in, day out. And look, I look back now and I think, yeah, probably I am quite, everyone wants a tag for themselves, ADHD, this, that. I don't sit still. I'm constantly on the move. I'm constantly doing things, but I think that's also a superpower. And I think writing lists is a great way to, evolve and keep moving, because every day is such a gift. You cannot waste it. And whether that came when I lost my friends really early on, I lost 7 friends in a plane crash, I realized how precious life is. And I realized not to waste time. And also, everything's a choice. You can wake up and choose happy. You can wake up and choose sad. You can wake up and say that I'm anxious, or you can take that feeling and go and use it to propel you out into your workplace, out into what you do. I think the greatest thing and the greatest way to succeed and move forward is plan. Every day is plan. I know we spoke a lot in Vodka Lectures about goal setting and about, really using your time as well, because time is so precious. You've got to look at yourself as, this incredible person, and your time cannot be wasted. You are a very important person in the whole scheme of the world, and whatever you're doing, you've got to look at that and value yourself. So all of a sudden everything changes. So if someone is late, you can be pissed off because your time is valuable, and then you'll never be late for someone else either. So I think if you start making these little changes within your life to really look within yourself, and everything, every episode that I did in Vodka Lectures was really a matter of building that life for yourself that you want. What I want with Wildly Appropriate is now you know what you need to do in terms of, goal setting, in terms of time management, but now is really looking at the things that changed my life, those pivotal moments that, yes, I did have my goals up on my wall. I was using my time, but what got me into doors? What got me, people say to me every day, oh my God, but you know so many people and you're so connected and you're so this, and oh my God, Krissy, you get into any restaurant in Sydney. Like, how does that happen? Well, I didn't wake up one day and could call any restaurant. What it comes with is respect. Every time I go somewhere, I treat people with respect. I go to, any Maryvale restaurant, and, obviously I've known Justin for a very long time, so maybe that's not a good example. But, Margaret's, I can go down there with, and go into Neil Perry's restaurant anytime, well before I was a housewife, well before anything, because I actually go in and treat people with respect. I don't get into restaurants because I'm a housewife. I don't get into restaurants because I did a reality TV show. I've been able to get into restaurants since I was like 20 years of age, in any restaurant you can in Sydney. It's because I bother to speak to people. I bother to say to the chef afterwards, wow, that was an amazing meal. There's a great little restaurant, 21 down in Double Bay, and how many times people say to me, oh my God, your kids come in here, they're so respectful. But that's what your life should be built on, is respect and connecting with people, and bother to follow up with people. If you have a fantastic meal somewhere, bother to go back and, say to them as you're leaving, thank you so much, incredible meal. I mean, there's a great restaurant in Crown Street, Bar Reggio. Everyone goes, oh, we can never get in there. I get in there the whole time. I give the pizza man a 20 on the way out, thank him for his time. It's not about the tip, but it's also about acknowledging that these people are working, acknowledging I'm not just a customer in there. So everything in life has got to be treated, as an experience and as an opportunity to connect. And I mean, I do this in hotels around the world as well. I can't even begin to go there, but how many upgrades I get, because I'm actually, I speak to the person at the front desk. Oh yeah, Jennifer, great to see you. I'm here with my family. We've got 5 rooms. Is there any chance? And also ask. I mean, mean, how many shops have you gone into and you just pay the price? Do you know, I never pay full price. A lot of the time I have to, because I'll go in and Milan will be like, oh, Mum, you're so embarrassing. But if I just say, oh, look, I'm buying 5 items, is there a discount with that? 10%, bang, straight away. So this is what I want to do. Is that wildly inappropriate? No, that's not inappropriate to ask for a discount. I'm buying a shitload from the store. Back in my day, when you just pick up the phone, being inappropriate sometimes really worked, because a lot of the time, all of these, general managers, managing directors had an EA that was basically like the bulldog at the front door that you could never get past. So sometimes I would use the line, they're like, can I ask who's calling? And I'd go, oh, yeah, it's Elle McPherson. I'm calling about a new photo shoot. That works sometimes. But the best one was that I used to find that I could always get through to the person. You can always find out the managing director's name. So rather than calling up and saying, I'd like to speak to Kyle Sandilands, you just call up and say, look, I'd like to speak to Kyle. And they're like, sorry, can I ask who's calling? And I'd be like, oh, yeah, it's Chrissy Marsh calling. And what is it in regard to? Look, he left his underwear at my house last night, and they'd be like, bang, you're straight through. So yes, that was wildly inappropriate, but it used to get me connected straight through to the MD. And obviously I wouldn't tell him how I got connected through to him. And obviously he didn't leave his undies at my house the night before, but it always worked a treat. So I think thinking of little fun things now, and also being accessible and not making people wait, oh, I'll call me at 2 p.m. or call it just, if you ring, I'll answer the phone. A lot of you might know, but I do quite a lot of mentoring, and it's something that I really enjoy. It gives me so much, pride when I hear someone's got a job or someone's done this. I had a fantastic text this morning from a guy named Ollie, and I mentored him years ago, probably well, not that many years ago, about 3 years ago. He's in corporate finance. He's got a fantastic job, and he sent me a text this morning saying, oh, Chrissy, I've just mentored, this young guy. I could never have done it without you teaching me how to mentor. And I think, although I wasn't in that corporate finance world, a lot of the time already, you can be your own best mentor. So finding the most appropriate mentor for yourself might be someone that's totally unexpected, because you really know what you need to do. And it might just mean sitting down and talking to someone that really solidifies your thoughts and the process that you need to go through. And that's what I find with mentoring is it's just someone lighting that fire, someone starting you off, someone starting that thought process. And I had a really great example of that, which I only found out last week, was a girl called Tia, who was a really fantastic success story, which I had no idea about, which I've only found out about 3 years on. And I would love to have her on Wildly Appropriate, so she can really talk about her experience herself. But I'm going to give you a little bit of it, because I was blown away at her success and how far she's come in only 3 years, and how motivated this girl is, and what a champion for young women she is. So I'm really looking forward to sharing that in the upcoming episodes. At the time, Tia was, really insecure, really unmotivated, didn't really even want to get out of bed to go to school. So those changes that she understood what she needed to do just by me sort of igniting those few goal-setting things really did change her life. We probably only spoke a couple of times, and that's the last time I've seen of her in 3 years. I met with her mother the other day. She's like, oh my God, Chrissy, you've got no idea what Tia's doing, where she is, what she's become. And that was all from just starting that process. So that's what I want you to think about, is when you're looking for a mentor, it's not about, the person that's had the most success in real estate and then you want to get into real estate and that's the path you're going to go down. It could be just a person that's done well in sales, or it could be, just someone that you admire the way they treat people. It's really finding someone that's going to provoke your thoughts and going to provoke your own mentorship, because that's what really a mentor is. A mentor is really just getting the best out of a person. And that's what I love so much, is that, it doesn't matter what profession or what field you want to go into. A lot of the people that I have mentored are going on to, the mentorees have become mentors. So when you're out there looking for someone that you admire or respect, don't necessarily has to be in the same field that you're in. It's really, I think a lot of the time family's too close. Although in saying that, I have mentored a lot of my nieces and nephews, but I wouldn't necessarily think that, me mentoring Billy or me mentoring Nico. That's why with Milana, when she was born, I actually made 4 godmothers, all 12-year-olds, because now those godmothers, now Milana's 18, all those godmothers are in their, late 20s, early 30s. That's a perfect age to be able to mentor Milana. So I often think, it could even be a peer that's, been successful. So don't always look in the most obvious places for a mentor. Look beyond, outside the box. Might, not be a wildly successful person, but it might be someone that has values that you respect, that you can sit down and talk to about where you want to go and what you want to do. Because I really do believe that each and every one of us knows where you want to go and knows what you want to do and knows where to start, but just is afraid to get started. And it's that whole fear. And that's why I think finding a mentor is brilliant, because often talking about it and talking about what you want gets you closer to actually getting you what you want. So to find the right mentor, you need RAC, RAC, the respect, the admiration, and connection. Really important to connect with that mentor, because that's who's going to take you to the next level. Just like my husband. He has all those 3 things.
How did you go from Ritz Carlton to real estate?
Reinventing yourself in your career is such an important hack, I suppose, to do. It really is a hack. How do you reinvent yourself? I went from foreign exchange to Ritz Carlton, and then I went into property, but I'd already been studying property. So it's not like I've made this huge, inappropriate or, outrageous career move. I was always planning for that. I always had a backup. I was always planning to go into property. The market was up, it was down. And I think that's the biggest thing. If you want to change careers, you start with the process. There's nighttime courses, there's courses online. If you're, currently in nursing, but would really love to become a yoga teacher, well, start doing, yoga of a weekend, start doing little side courses. And I think, everyone goes, oh my gosh, you pivoted careers so many times, but it was always a plan. I always had a backup. So I was modeling. I was doing really well in modeling, but I always had the backup of property. Then I went into foreign exchange, but I always had, the backup of property. Foreign exchange wasn't right for me at the time. I made that job seem like sales. Then I dipped into Ritz Carlton. Neil Diamond's mother tipped me over the edge. And then I decided that I was out of there, and I was going to, I actually went to Italy in between, but then I came back and I got into property. How did I get back into property from Ritz Carlton? Was because it's the same thing. You're selling a pencil, you're selling you're selling a currency, you're selling a hotel room, or you're selling an industrial property. You're still selling, it's still client-based, it's still system-based. And that's the thing. With anything, with jobs, I think you've got to be systematic in your approach, regardless of whether you're making sandwiches in a sandwich shop or whether you are, selling property. And regardless of what you do, you've got to be strategic and you've got to be organized. And I think regardless of what career you jump in and out of, it's really important that you have those same skill sets and those same organizational. And if you don't have those now, in any career that you're in, if you're not time managing, if you're not looking at your week in advance, regardless of it, even, not even if you're a mum, but if you're a stay-at-home mum with a small baby, start planning out your week, start giving yourself a life, start working out when you can grab an hour to go for a walk down the street. And, this prevents burnout, regardless of what career. You hear so many mothers at postnatal, so many mothers have so many traumatic, feelings of when they're alone with that baby because they're not getting little breaks. And I'm not saying that's the only reason, but you do need short breaks. You do need to plan your week, regardless of what your career is, to give yourself time, whether you're a mother, a father, a student, whatever career you're doing. And I think, it wafts into personal life. So you can pivot on careers, but it's all about planning and it's all about timing. Everything in life is about timing, and time is precious and time is the key.
When you were going into real estate, there wouldn't have been that many women working in real estate world.
No, I hate the whole male-dominated industry. Yes, I get what a male-dominated industry is, but why is it dominated? There's just a lot of men in that industry. Every male-dominated industry, and I probably dominated, so I hate the word male-dominated industries, because it puts women in a different light. And I think a lot of the advancements that we've made saying, we need to have equal positions for women and we've got to have equal women on the board, it takes away from the ability of those women getting there because of their own ability, not just because they're female. And I go back to this all the time, was my father explaining 3 types of women in business. One that uses her womanly ways to get what she wants. You obviously don't want to be that woman in a male-dominated industry going around in short skirts and doing that sort of thing. Then there's, the woman that becomes one of the blokes. In a male-dominated industry, I don't want to be swigging beers and, doing that, like becoming a blokey bloke. I never saw myself as anything different from a man. I never looked at gender as something that would hinder me, and it never has hindered me. And I think coming from a family of 4 girls, my father always taught me that. Everyone goes, wow, you had, the first female, only real estate agency in South Sydney. Well, no, I just didn't choose to go out and employ only women. It's the way that it happened. And God, aren't they fabulous and aren't they fantastic? No guy could ever keep up. So I'd say I'm in a woman-dominated industry, a female-dominated industry. Do you ever hear that? I'm sure the airline hostesses was a female-dominated industry. So why even target that? I hate labels.
You're obviously thinking you can do anything or you can go into any industry, it doesn't matter. But do you think that when an industry is predominantly dominated by men at the current moment when you're trying to break into it, do you think that women need different strategies to be respected in that industry?
I think women's strategies going into a male-dominated world is to really understand your true value and your true sense of yourself. And I think I've always had a really not overinflated opinion of myself, but a strength that there's no difference between a woman and a man. However, if you're trying to break into an industry, and especially nowadays, it's actually almost an advantage to, in being a woman because people remember you. So for me, in sales, I was in a male-dominated industry, in industrial property. So I sort of saw that as a bit of an advantage because they'd obviously remember me because in a room of 20 guys, I was the only female. So, in a sales perspective, that was not often a bad thing. So I do believe you've got to also play on those strengths. Oh God, it is a tough question to answer. How would I do things differently or how would I go in there? I think you've just got to go in with the belief that there is no difference. You've got to prove yourself. I don't think you have to prove yourself more because you're a woman. You just have to prove you're the right person for the job. And I think that's with everything. It's not whether you're male or whether you're female. Are you the right person for the job? In a male-dominated industry, I did a lot of things to stand out. I pushed barriers a lot of the time rather than looking back and going, the head of Woolworths would come into South Sydney. I had the best information. I had the best market information, but I also wasn't afraid to sort of lean into some different marketing strategies. And with property, when you're selling property, it's all about how you're going to market that property. Sometimes I probably did do a few sexist things, but I'd, put a, gorgeous pair of legs on a warehouse building. I've got a great synopsis of how to use your femininity in a male-dominated world. So when I started in industrial property, I was on loads of construction sites down in South Sydney. Everyone was doing these design and constructs, and all the developers were down there. And it was really, really wet. It had rained like 13 weekends in Sydney. So you needed to have some gumboots and a hard hat to go on site. And I thought, oh, bugger this. Everyone keeps going, oh, you're a female in this male-dominated world. So I went in and I bought myself a pair of hot pink gumboots and I had a bright yellow hard hat. So not only was I walking onto that construction site as a woman, I was walking in saying, okay, I am female. Here are my pink gumboots. Here is my yellow hard hat. Go get them. I had an old boss that said to me, look, I would suggest not wearing a skirt. And I'm like, no one's ever going to tell me what I should wear when I should wear it. So, a lot of the time then I just wore skirts for the whole week. And I'm not talking skirts like, Gosford skirts up near the entrance, like ridiculously short. They were like appropriate skirts. And if you didn't get that joke, Gosford is right near a place called the Entrance. But anyway, that's being wildly inappropriate, and this show is wildly appropriate. But I don't think being a female in a male-dominated world is a disadvantage. Use it to your advantage and, be the best that you can be in any job and in any profession you go for. And that's where you've got to be prepared to put in the hard work in order to have success. I didn't become number 9 in the world for Ritz Carlton as a salesperson by sitting on my ass. I took every opportunity that came my way. And that's the thing. Be open to it. If you've got idle time at your desk, if you've got idle time when you're working from home, don't use that idle time. Go to your boss and say, I've completed those 10 tasks you've given me. I'd love the next thing. I never looked at how to complete my job and how to complete my tasks. I always looked for the next thing. I always looked at how I could push, and I was constantly pushing. And that's what turned me on as a worker. That's what I wanted for myself. I always wanted to push the limit. So when I worked at Ritz Carlton, we all got territories, and it was the same as when I was a director at Chesterton's when I first started in industrial property. Everyone gets given a territory. So I was given South Sydney, which was like Alexandria, Mascot, all those areas. I wasn't just happy with that. I wanted all of it. So I took that on, I conquered that. Then I took on North Sydney. At the same time I had that area, then I took on Parramatta as well. So by the time I left Chesterton's in industrial property, I'd conquered the South Sydney market, I'd taken over the North Sydney market, and I'd taken over the Western Sydney market. I was running all of industrial for all of New South Wales. So I think it's what you want as a person. I've always wanted more, and I'm not saying that that's right for everyone, but that's what I am as a person. I always want to be the best. I always, regardless of any field. So it's not about male. It's not about female. I want the best for me. I want the best for my family. And that for me, and I always knew I was going to be the best mum. I always knew and that's what upsets me when people have imposter syndrome. It upsets me when people doubt themselves. And don't get me wrong, I've always, everyone has doubt. But that voice you've got to learn to control and learn to shut down. And I don't think I learnt that until I was 25, until I actually truly learnt what it was like to be alone. And that's when I was living in Italy and I didn't speak the language. I was going out with a guy there, and I'd spend a lot of hours in a day not speaking and also being on my own. And I think that's when I truly appreciated the strength within yourself to know what you want and to know, how far you can push yourself. And that for me is a really important, regardless of what I do, I always want to be the best. And that's something, that has always propelled me to do better, always got me searching for the right mentor, always got me searching to the right person to connect with. And I think, life is a part of evolving. Life is a part of changing daily. And that's why, I have changed the name of the podcast. I mean, I never want to stay the same. I never want to. And that's why, people say to me, oh, how have you been married for 22 years? Because we evolve together, we change together, we grow together. And I think that's what you want to be doing as a person, because if you're not evolving and growing, you're not living your life. And I think you always will want the best for yourself, and don't let doubt get the better of you. Don't let those thoughts in your head. And that's what it is. And that's why I devoted a whole podcast session to overthinking, because that really can inhibit you in life, is your overthinking and overthoughts. Change thinking about it to just doing it. If you can just change the thought process to just do it, even if it's wrong and you stuff up. And that's, I think, been my greatest success in life, is I don't think too much. And yes, it's probably gotten me into trouble. And yes, I don't always say the right thing to people. And yes, I'm probably a lot of the time inappropriate, but it also gets me to be where I am today. It's gotten me to change careers, to build on, to believe that I'm the best mother, to create a family that I'm so, incredibly proud of. So you've got to be continually evolving and changing. Don't accept where you are now to be it, and I find that really hard for people, is to, be in a job that you hate, because I can't comprehend that. I want to wake up every day and be happy about where I'm going. People say, how could you just decide not to do Housewives anymore? It's like, if you get up and you're not happy and you're not looking forward to a day, life is too short. You make the changes, you pivot. And everyone can do it. And it's about going out and finding that right mentor. It might even be sitting down and having a chat with a family member just to work out, before you find the ideal mentor. And what really is the ideal mentor? You yourself are your ideal mentor. Find someone that'll help you, realize what you want to do. And, there's an amazing woman, and her name is Sophie Whitehouse, and she is a tutor. She runs a tutoring service. But what Sophie has the ability to do is sit down with a child and work out, a child that doesn't know what they want to do, to give them options. And you're not looking for the perfect job. You're looking for options in life. And that's what this is about, is looking at the options you have in front of you. And what Sophie is incredible to do with these young people that are finishing school. But I've sent her people that are in their 20s as well, that are at crossroads in what they're doing at university. And she sort of gives them a course that'll then give them options. Milana at the moment, it's like, I don't know what I want to do when I finish school. I said, go and do a general degree. Go and do something that will give you options. And I think that's what a mentor should be able to give you. A mentor should be able to show you and open up doors and give you different options. It might be, the guy that runs the corner store that's been exceptionally successful in keeping a business alive. And you might want to open your own business. It might be sitting and chatting to him. How does he get up every day and motivate himself to go to work when there's only him working, in the corner store? Or there might be a sandwich person that's running a sandwich shop that she gets up every day and motivates herself to run her own business, pay her own wages. So it doesn't need to be in the career that you need to be in. What you need to do to find your perfect mentor is just to start. You might evolve, and it might be, 5 or 6 different people in life. At the moment, I've just, changed managers, and that's someone that's really motivating me and helping and mentor me into a new career, into a new stage of my life. And I know when one of the vodka lectures that we recently did, we talked about what happens after your kids leave home, and what happens, when you've an empty nester. What's the next path you go to, and what's the next, that's what you need to find. So every stage in your life, you might have different mentors along the way. What's important is you're continually evolving and continually moving. Okay. I've got a fun new segment at the end of each podcast. It's a little challenge for you all. So I want you to go out and find your own mentor. So I don't want it to be someone in your family or, anyone in your direct, line of command. I want you to go out and find someone that you admire, connect with them, ask them, what have been their greatest challenges in life, maybe ask them how they've become successful in their job. Have they had some career pivots? Just really making a connection with someone. It mightn't be your ideal mentor, but you never know until you give it a go. So it might be someone that is unexpected. You can always gain something, regardless of what profession they're in. So I want to challenge you by next week to have gone out there, make your wild move this week. Don't do it tomorrow, do it today. pick up the phone, ask for a coffee. You don't have to say, can you be my mentor? Say, look, I just love half an hour of your time. Then go and connect with them. What have you learned in business? You know, or what makes you a great mom? What makes you a great dad? Or if you're wanting to become a mom, you know, what are the challenges that you've had in motherhoods? A mother that you might, you know, admire. So it doesn't necessarily have to be in your career. It's something you might want to change in your life. It might, you know, you want to get more physically active, and you might know someone that, you know, is super fit. You might go and, you know, ask them for a coffee. So make that connection this week. It'd be great if you could come back and give your comments and what you've learned from that mentor, because you know what, read some of the other people's as well, because this is how we all learn. We all learn from each other. I'm learning from you guys every day. I'm learning from your comments. I'm loving your feedback. And nothing gives me more joy than to wake up of a morning and have some fantastic feedback and how, you know, I've managed to change your life and I've managed to make something better for you. And if you want to build a wildly appropriate life, hit subscribe. Until next week, stay wild, stay winning, and stay appropriate.
We'll end it.
Love it. I love that. Yay. Yay.